Southwest Florida's newest game in town brings you all the NFL action that you're asking for. Lloyd and Kevin have all the news, updates, trades, and rumors from the NFL. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game starts now.
Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week on 102.9 The Game in the Broad Street South Network. So glad everybody can be back with us this evening. Kevin is on assignment. So we have our summer intern, my son, Nate Vance from Misericordia University. He is joining us once again, and he's going to be around for the whole show. So it's going to be fun, exciting, fast and furious, lots to get into. Injuries. We have actually, I won't say live game action to talk about, but we have preseason games to talk about. And we're going to finish up with a preview of the NFC South. I know that'll be interesting to some of our listeners down in the Tampa, Florida area. So let's get into it. Nate, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Oh, great. Good. So I'll just begin with, we've been watching these preseason games. What do you think of preseason football? Is it necessary, not necessary? They're talking about going to an 18-game regular season in the next couple of years, and it would probably only be about 2 preseason games. Would that bother you?
No, I don't think it would bother me as much. I think the joint practices that these teams have been having lately is a lot better than these preseason games, because during these preseason games, you don't see like the starters coming out and playing the whole game. And it's really for guys to make their name known, the guys that don't play as much or trying to make the roster. So, I mean, these joint practices, they're way more aggressive. They're way more active. And I feel like that's the route that the NFL is going to have to take in the future.
Yeah, and I think you're correct. Most of the teams now they don't practice at colleges and training camp anymore. I used to always go up to Lehigh. Now everybody's kind of at their own facility, and they are controlling the practices, the situations, and they bring in other teams for a week. Like this week, the Philadelphia Eagles are up in New England with the Patriots. They'll practice together all week, and then they will have an exhibition game, I think, Friday night. So the thing is, Nate, sometimes when these guys practice together, we see some fights, man. And I don't know if it's because it's a opposing jersey or what, but like the Giants and I believe it was the Lions, they had a really spirited week of practice. Did you see that in all the fights?
Yeah, I got to see Malik Neighbors and the cornerback for the Lions, Joseph. They were really going at it. They were just started throwing haymakers at each other. Neighbors said that he was talking some trash to him and stuff like that, and he just lost his head and he started throwing punches. And I saw also Daniel Jones try to get in the fight, which I just thought was not a good thing for your starting quarterback. They should be the one trying to break it up. And yeah, them guys they're so competitive and it's not like in game where you get fined and suspended and all that, so they can get away with it in practices.
Well, actually, there were $200,000 laid down in fines from the National Football League because they're trying to limit this, and luckily no one was hurt. And I've seen in the past where guys have gotten hit and hurt their orbital bone or something and missed time from getting punched in the face. And this situation where the NFL wants to control this and make sure this is not getting out of hand. But as you said, this is a new NFL where these guys are practicing together, and this is where they're getting their most work because, quite frankly, with the NFL, cut down day is August 27th, and it's a one cut down. So it is, it's going to go from 90 all the way down to 53 one day. So you're having all these guys getting reps, and that's who they're going to use in these game situations. They're not going to use their frontline guys. I know the Chiefs put some of their guys out there, and Mahomes and some of these guys, they only got to play one series. So, I think that's what teams are going to do, and that's the interesting part. So we'll see how this goes, and we'll dig into some of these games in a minute, but I just wanted to go over a couple other topics that are around the National Football League, get your take on them. Hassan Reddick He's basically on a 1 year deal now with the New York Jets. He's doing a hold in. His fines are up to now $2.37 million in fines, and that's because $50,000 per missed camp day. And then if he misses a game check, it's going to be $791,000 that he's forfeiting. Do you think they will figure this out? It seems like Joe Douglas, their GM, is kind of dug in on this.
Yeah, I just think it's insane that the Jets went out and traded for him, knowing that they were going to have to pay him, that he wanted to get paid, and they still don't want to pay him. And what was the point of bringing him in if you weren't going to pay him? I know they're trying to win now and everything, but you knew he wasn't going to show up if you weren't going to give him that contract. And now it's going to be a big problem because Joe Douglas is talking about, oh, we're just going to keep fining him, and if he doesn't want to report, we're going to be fine with the guys that we got. But he's a good player, and they gave up, I think, a third-round pick to get him. And I mean, you're just wasting it. Might as well just give him his 1 year deal at least, and just let him play out this year. If he's good, then re-sign him. If not, then just let him go. But I think it's just insane how Joe Douglas is handling the situation.
Yeah, and maybe they could slide some of that money forward and try something because they need to sign Reddick. That division is very tough, as you know, being a Bills fan. You have Miami, you have the Bills that are still there, and the Jets. Let's face it, they're on a 1 year proposition with this whole group because Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old. Last year of his 2 year contract, he signed with them, and they need to make some moves quickly. The Jets have not been to the playoffs since 2013, the longest drought in the National Football League. We'll see if they're able to turn this around, but it's not a good situation. He's dug in. And, Nate, this is holdout time. So another big story around the National Football League is Brandon Ayuk. I'm hearing that, possibly that it could get done with the Steelers. The Niners are still trying to placate him and give him a new contract, possibly at a lower rate. But how do you think the Brandon Ayuk situation is going to turn out? And, can the Niners survive without him?
Yeah, I think they can definitely survive without him. And in my opinion, I think he's definitely going to go to the Steelers. You look at their team, and they also have Trent Williams holding out right now. And I think he's a way bigger piece to the puzzle than Brandon Ayuk is. I mean, he's the best O lineman in the league. And the Niners' offensive line is not very good besides Trent Williams, and they need him bad. And they're going to have to sign the both of them if they want to keep the both of them. And I just don't think they can do that. And Brandon Ayuk is a piece in the offense. He didn't break out till last year, but I think he's not downgrading how good he is, but I do think he's a replaceable piece in the offense because they still have Juwan Jennings, they drafted Ricky Pearsall, they drafted another guy in the 5th round. Like, I think they have enough receiver depth, and they still have McCaffrey and Kittle. So I don't think he needs to be there, and I don't think the Niners should pay him.
Yeah, and I think their general manager, John Lynch, he definitely is kind of dug in on this, and the York family who owns the team, they've kind of said, you know what, let him kind of sit, wait, stew, whether he's going to play or not. And I talked about earlier that $50K per day when they're not showing up. Now he's doing a hold in, so I don't think they're finding him. But as the weeks go along and we get closer to the end of August and we get closer to the season starting, if he's not going to be there and they can't work something out, they're just going to kind of weed him out. And that's what teams typically do. I just saw a piece on NFL Network, Scott Pioli, a guy that I do some work with on another organization. He was saying, it reminded him of they had Deion Branch back in the day with the Patriots, and he was a guy who wanted a new contract, and their team just was not built around him, and they had other people, other priorities that they had to do. They kind of waited for him, and then they eventually traded him to Seattle into the season, and the team just went on, and they continued to win games and championships. So, Ayuk better be careful. He may end up, we all know the Le'Veon Bell situation and how that turned out in terms of his career was never the same after his big holdout. So it's going to be interesting, but holdouts are going to be part of the game. And we're talking about getting everybody ready for the 2024 season here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm here with Nate Vance, who is pinch hitting for Kevin this week. And another big story in training camp, Nate, is there's still injuries, and everybody needs to make it to the season healthy, and particularly at the quarterback position. So Justin Herbert is still walking around, walking boot. He has a foot injury. This is lingering. Is it going to be a problem for the Chargers? Because I don't think Easton Stick is really the answer for them at quarterback.
No, Easton Stick is definitely not the answer, and this could be a problem because that type of injury that he have, it lingers throughout. You've seen other players have it before, and it lingers throughout the season, and it could really mess up their season this year if he's not fully healthy. Because Justin Herbert's a big athletic guy, he likes to move around in the pocket, and if he can't move out of the pocket as much because of his foot, I mean, it's not going to be really good. I know they want to run the ball and play defense with John Harbaugh, but they need Justin Herbert to be healthy if they're going to be good.
It's going to be interesting to see, in terms of the Chargers, how they can negotiate that, and they definitely need him because I think they could compete for that 6, 7 spot in the playoffs, possibly a wild card. I don't think they can get the Chiefs, but they're definitely better than the Raiders and the Denver Broncos. Obviously, we think they're going to have a very tough season this year, so it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out there. We were talking about Ayuk, and a big debate around the National Football League is number one receiver. Recently the Green Bay Packers head coach Matt LaFleur said he doesn't want to hear any number one receiver talk. They have plenty of guys he thinks that can work with Jordan Love, whether it's Watson, uh, Romeo Dobbs, Wicks, or Jordan Reed, who led them in receptions last year. Do you think teams need a number one receiver, and can they survive a la the Tom Brady Patriots and like Patrick Mahomes has done the last couple of years without Tyreek Hill?
It really depends on what kind of team you have built around. Because I mean, like you said, Mahomes and Brady both did it, but they were respectfully both the best quarterbacks at that point in time in the league. I do think if you don't have a top tier quarterback, like if you look at Tua Tagovailoa, he needs his weapons around him. He needs Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle because before he had them, he wasn't performing. He wasn't doing as good as he was. So it really just depends. I think in order to win a Super Bowl, though, you definitely need to have a guy at receiver that can is just a consistent like 100 yards a game. If you have that number one receiver, it's such a cheat code in the league. But Mahomes has showed that you really don't. If you're that good, you don't need one. But I think everybody else besides Mahomes, I think they need a number one receiver.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a litmus test as we look around the National Football League because it's a passing league first now. I know in the past, when Dallas was winning the Super Bowls and the Steelers back in the 70s, your team was built around your running back. But now it's built around your quarterback, and he's got to have a big play receiver out there. And the Colts were able to get it done with, Marvin Harrison was the number one receiver, Reggie Wayne, and Peyton Manning, and they were able to convert that into Super Bowl championship. So it is possible. And the Packers kind of have a luxury right now having all these young players on their roster. And Christian Watson, though, he's always hurt. So, it's good that they have other options. But most teams want that guy who's the definitive guy who's going to take coverage away from everybody. So I would say, yeah, Mahomes is able to overcome it, but you have to have a number one receiver and somebody that's able to move. It's going to be a threat. Whether he's a number one receiver, he has to be a threat to the defense. So that's going to be interesting to see. Before we hit over unders in terms of team wins here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game and the Coast Sports Network, I wanted to get something that came down today, Nate. There are a couple more injuries that came down. I want to get your opinion on. Jahmyr Gibbs has a hamstring injury. I think that could be. I know they have Montgomery, but I think that could be a problem for them.
Yeah, he's an explosive back for them. He gives them the big play at the running back position, and those two are the best running back duo in the league. So I think that'll definitely hurt them if he can't start out the year healthy and has to miss time. But overall, they should be fine with Montgomery. Montgomery's a good, reliable back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a bruiser. Like Dan Campbell loves him. So I think they'll be just fine.
And let's not forget, they got Craig Reynolds from Abington High School, a young man I've known for a long time, him and his father. So he'll get his opportunity as well, from Kutztown. And he's played pretty well for them on special teams. So I think the Lions will be okay, holding down a force until Gibbs back. Now, one other injury, J.J. McCarthy, who's a rookie quarterback. You thought, okay, J.J. stepped forward this past weekend in the preseason games, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But JJ has a meniscus tear, and I think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, he'll probably end up missing the whole year because of this, and it's a shame because he looked good in that preseason game on Saturday or whenever he played. He looked really good. He looked efficient with the ball. He was getting it out of his hands quick to his receivers and stuff. And just having a torn meniscus, I mean, in your first year, it sucks. I mean, he can learn. He can sit back and watch and learn from Sam Darnold, and the Vikings probably won't end up being a playoff team, so he can just take the year to sit back and learn. And you've seen from other quarterbacks that that's not always the worst thing in the world. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He sat a year behind Alex Smith, and now he's the best quarterback in the league. So.
Yeah, the interesting thing about quarterbacks, 60 different quarterbacks started a game in 2023. So that just shows you that you have to have quality backups, and you have to have a quarterback that can step in, whether it's for a couple, just for a short period of time. And it's going to be interesting to see. Sam Darnold's going to get his opportunity. We'll see if it's going to be Sam Darnold or Jalen Hall's there as well from BYU, the rookie who played okay for a little bit, and then he got hurt as well. So, the Vikings, I thought they were going to have kind of a down year, but they do have Justin Jefferson, and he has that newly minted 4-year contract that makes him the highest paid receiver in National Football League history. So they do have him, and that's going to be interesting to turn out. But bad loss for them, and we'll see how that's going to affect their season going forward. Here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and the Coast Sports Network. I'm here with Nate Vance. We're going to switch gears a little bit and kind of look at teams. And a big piece now is gambling around the National Football League. I routinely am on the Back at Play show here on this network with Rich Quinones. And so Nate and I are going to look at some of the teams and I want to get his take on whether they can hit their number or not. So Nate, I'll start with the Houston Texans. Right now, Vegas is saying 9.5 wins over under for them. I tend to think they're going to beat that and continue on what they did last season.
Yeah, I mean, 9.5 seems super low for them. I thought for sure they would be around 10.5, 11.5 after all the additions they had this offseason. And they had 10 wins last year with C.J. Stroud as a rookie, and he missed 2 games because of a concussion. I mean, this seems like an easy over.
Yeah, they all seem easy until you put the money down. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think the Texans definitely should be able to beat that number. They should win that AFC South division. That's kind of downtrodden. I think Jacksonville is going to continue to slide. Kind of last season, they had some troubles. And then we'll see from there. But yeah, I think 9.5 is a little low. I think to go over that. Another extreme, the Carolina Panthers. They're at 5.5 wins now. A couple weeks ago, I had Javon Alford on this show, and he was talking up the Panthers. He really thought they could take a step forward this season. I just think, last year they won 2 games, and I from 2 to 5 would be a nice leap for them because they get rid of Brian Burns, they're one of their best players. He's now with the Giants, and you're really wondering, is Bryce Young really the answer after being the number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago? So Carolina 5.5.
They're a tricky team, man. I mean, Bryce Young did not look good at all last year, but he didn't have nothing around him. I mean, when Adam Thielen's your number 1 receiver, and he used to be a dog, but he's 34 years old now. And so they brought some new pieces in around him. Deontay Johnson, they drafted Xavier Legette. They signed Robert Hunt to the offensive line who they stole from the Dolphins. So, I mean, they're a tricky team to project how many wins they're going to have, but if I had to guess, I would take the under on the Panthers.
All right, so we both go under on 5.5 for the Panthers. A team we just talked about. Now, this number may change given what we just talked about with J.J. McCarthy, but The Minnesota Vikings are 6.5 wins. And now with no McCarthy, I think definitely under that 6.5. What do you think about the Vikings 6.5?
Yeah, I would tend to go with the under too because I don't think Sam Darnold is an NFL starting caliber quarterback. Everywhere that he's went, he's never performed. There, a couple of these offensive coaches like Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell like what he can do. Maybe he could surprise some people and have a Baker type comeback, but I don't really see it. So I think they're definitely going to be under 6.5.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. Does O'Connell kind of get a pass with him losing his bonus baby rookie quarterback? And, they paid Jefferson, so we're going to see how they turn out. But, yeah, I think under 6.5 is looking at what it's going to be for the Vikings. And we talked about it earlier in the preview. They're probably going to be in the bottom of the very tough NFC North division. I expect the Bears to take a step forward, and the Lions are probably going to maintain where they were. So I agree with you. Now, this is an interesting one, Nina. It's right here in our backyard, Philadelphia. The Eagles are over under for wins is 10.5 wins. Now, I I think they're going to barely beat that number. I'd say they come in at 11 or so. But I think they can win this division. It's very winnable. Dallas is kind of down, and the Giants, uh, they might be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and Washington's rebuilding.
Yeah, I got the Eagles at 12-5 this year. I think they're going to have a bounce back year. Jalen Hurts has all these weapons around him. They upgraded their biggest weakness, which was their corners. They addressed that in the draft. They got Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, and then they also got Cooper DeJean, who everybody's hyping up from Iowa. So I think the Eagles are going to have a bounce back season as long as Nick Sirianni isn't as much as a fraud as everybody thinks he is. I think they'll definitely have a better year this year.
Yeah, and they brought back C.J. Garner Johnson, brought him back from Detroit to help out that defense, and I think that defense is definitely going to be more improved than last year. I mean, there was no place to go but up. I think they were 30th in the NFL in points allowed. So it's going to be interesting about the Eagles, but I definitely think they beat that 10.5, and then they go from there and expect Jalen Hurts to kind of have a bounce back season. I think him and Kellen Moore are gelling. Everybody I've talked to that's at camp every day, they said that they're on the same page. And, it's just going to be interesting to see how Sirianni, in terms of his development, is he ready to be more CEO type and not call the plays? And but I think the Eagles are going to have a good season. And, it's all predicated on that NFC East that's kind of down this year around them. Another over/under team I wanted to go over, and this is one of the number one stories around the National Football League. Everybody's talking about Aaron Rodgers, and the New York Jets over/under in terms of wins is 9.5. And the way things are going for the Jets, we talked about the Son Reddick situation earlier, and just something seems amiss with this group. 9.5 may just be too much for them. I see them closer, 8, 9 wins or so. So I say they hit under 9.5. The New York Jets.
Yeah, I got them just going under too. I think they're going to win 9 games. There's a lot of newness there, a lot of old players that need to stay healthy in order to win, and there are a lot of guys that have proven that they are going to get hurt. So, I mean, it's an old roster mixed with a young defense. So I think it's not going to gel very well, and I got them going 9-8. So I'll take the under.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to watch, and they're going to be all over prime time because everybody wants to see Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see if he's able to bounce back from that Achilles injury. But I just think 9.5 maybe just be too much for that team. Uh, I'll stay in the same division, go to their rivals. Your team, the Buffalo Bills, their over under is 10.5. Now, I still think they're going to win that division. Everybody's saying I need to watch out for Miami, and Miami's rebuilding with all their speedsters on offense. But I think that Buffalo and Josh Allen and McDermott, they have their program there, and I think they're going to be able to squeak out another division title. So I think they just beat that 10.5.
Yeah, I'm right with you on that one. I think Josh Allen's going to carry the team, put the team on his back to around 11 wins, just like they were last year, around 11-6. So I'll take the over.
Yeah, and we know they won that division for 4 straight years, and that's going to be an interesting thing to see if they're able to do it once again. Another heavy favorite around the National Football League, and we talked about their hold-ins, and when you lose that Super Bowl, all bullseyes are on you. So and people start asking, can you get back to the big game? Can you get it done again? The San Francisco 49ers, their over under is 11 and a half. I tend to think that the LA Rams are going to win this division this year, and I think the Niners may take a step back. So I say they're going to go under that 11 and a half.
Yeah, we've agreed on every one so far. I'm right with you on this one too. I think they take a step back this year. McCaffrey's hurt in training camp right now, which isn't a good sign, that calf injury. And then Trent Williams is holding out. They don't have Trent Williams. I mean, you can look at the statistics. They're a different team without him. And then on top of that, losing Ayuk, who's an All-Pro receiver, it's trending not so good for them. So I got them right around 10, 11 wins this year.
All right. Well, let me see if I can throw a curveball in here, and we can. The Tennessee Titans, Nate. Now, the Tennessee Titans over under is 6.5 games. A lot of people are talking about. They think they brought in L'Jarius Sneed, Will Levis, and possibly could be the answer at quarterback. But I think they're going to have a very bad season. I think 6.5 is too high for them. I'm going to go under that 6.5 for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I like the over on them. If you look at their offseason, they had a tremendous offseason. They had one of the most amount of cap space in the NFL, and they signed just so many dudes. They signed that defense. They signed Quandre Diggs the other day. They have Jamal Adams. They got L'Jarius Sneed. They got Calvin Ridley on offense. Tony Pollard. They're trying to rebuild the O line right now. They signed Lloyd Cushenberry, who I know you're a fan of, and they drafted the tackle out of Alabama in the first round. Also, they drafted the guy last year, Peter Skoronski, who was a guard for them as well, who was good in his rookie year. So I think they're definitely going to take a step up this year, and I got them winning about 7, 8 games this year.
Yeah, the key thing with the Titans is going to be Brian Callahan, their young offensive coach coming over for the Bengals, excuse me. And it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to establish a running game. I know his dad, Bill Callahan, a famous offensive line coach, is coming there with them, but they're going to have no Derrick Henry. We'll see how Pollard works out as their number one back, and of course Will Levis. He could throw a ball through a brick wall, but can he be the established quarterback that this team needs? So I think with a rookie coach that they're not going to hit that 6.5. That's going to be a fun one to watch. This one I was totally shocked at. I think we're going to agree though. Dallas Cowboys 10.5 wins. I just haven't seen them do enough in terms of this offseason, bringing Ezekiel Elliott back and CD Lamb's fight with them. So, I think people should run to the door. 10.5 wins. I just say take the under when it comes to Dallas.
Yeah, I'm taking the under too. They didn't do enough to put surrounding pieces around this team to make you think that they're going to be a high level team again like they were last year. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is a corpse of himself. He had one of the worst yards per carry stat in the NFL last year. And on top of that, if Jerry Jones keeps messing around with the CD Lamb situation, they're gonna have no offense, and Dak's just not gonna be able to throw to anybody, and it's just not gonna be a good season. So yeah, I'm definitely taking the under on the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one. And now it's interesting because Cincinnati Bengals have this same over under. They're a tough one because in this division, every team had a winning record in the AFC North, and this is one of the toughest divisions in the National Football League. Now the Bengals 10.5. You still have the Ravens in this division. I'm very high on the Steelers. I think the Steelers somehow are going to, with Mike Tomlin, figure out a way to win that division. 10.5. I'll say the Bengals come in with 10 wins exactly. I say they don't hit 10.5.
Yeah, I got them on the under too. The Bengals. I think they're the only team in that division that doesn't have a solid defense. Their defensive backfield. You saw last year when they lost Jesse Bates, their All-Pro safety. It just wasn't the same. and they were just getting cooked up and down the field. And who knows what Joe Burrow is going to be like this year, if he's going to be healthy, if he's not going to be healthy. And I just think the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens all have better rosters than them. So I would go with the under for the Bengals.
This is another one I think people should run to the window and think about giving me this. The Denver Broncos over under. The Denver Broncos over under is people need to run to the window for this. The Denver Broncos over under is 5.5 wins. I just think this is going to be a very bad football team. They have Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback who looks like he's going to be the starter. Um, I just don't think they get 5.5 wins. I think it's an easy sucker bet. I think, take the under on that 5.5 for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I like the over for the Broncos this year. I think Sean Payton squeezed every little bit of talent he had out of that team last year. They were definitely not an 8-win team last year, and he coached them well and brought them to 8 wins with Russ, who I think is just, how I feel about Russell Wilson. I don't think that he's an elite quarterback anymore, not a very good quarterback. And if you watch Bo Nixon the other day in the preseason, I know it's the preseason and not to overreact or anything, but Bo Nix looks highly efficient, and he looks like a pretty good. He's going to be a pretty good quarterback. So I think he could definitely bring this team to 6 wins. I mean, 6 wins isn't a lot, so I like the over on the Broncos.
Oh, a little disagreement. There we go. Like it. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. The team, because some people are talking them up, other people are like, no way. I think that you know they just don't have the talent. So it's going to be fun to watch them. They do have some pieces on defense there. Patrick Surtain the second in particular, and I just worry about offensively. They just don't have a lot there now. This team, a lot of people are talking about, and we're getting ready to preview the NFC South coming up. The Atlanta Falcons, this is one of my bounce back teams. Every year in the National Football League for the last 30 years, there's been 4 new teams to make the playoffs. I think that this is going to be one of those teams that comes out of nowhere and makes the playoffs. So I think the Atlanta Falcons 9.5 wins. I'm going to take the over on that one.
Yeah, that's an easy over for me. Kirk Cousins and that offense, they're just going to be putting up so much numbers. That offense is going to be highly efficient, and they're going to turn a lot of heads this year, I think, because they were accustomed to seeing Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke, and you're just going to be able to see, like I was saying, like just so much better offense than what it was the past 2 years. And on top of that, the Falcons, according to strength of schedule, have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So I think that's one of the best over lines in the league.
Yeah, that's a good point you made there, and that's going to be interesting to see if they're able to achieve that and that easy schedule. And you have Raheem Morris there, and we'll get into the X and O's on this team in a minute. But I definitely think Atlanta's ready for a bounce back. Uh, the Rams, who we talked about a little bit earlier because of the Niners and that huge rivalry between them. The Rams over under is 8.5, and I just think they're ready for a bounce back. I know Puka Nacua is a little banged up for them at the wide receiver position. They're hoping he's coming back. They're saying his knee's going to be fine for game one. I just think that this Rams team is poised with Matthew Stafford, who continues to be underrated around the league, even though he won a championship. I think that this team, under McVay, can definitely go over the 8.5 that's listed.
Yeah, I like the Rams over too. Like you were saying, I think they're my pick this year to win the NFC West. I think their offense is going to be really good. They get a fully healthy year out of Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, and Matthew Stafford. With that upgraded O line, I think they're going to be a dangerous team with one of the best offenses in the league. So yeah, that's another one of them that seems like an easy over for me.
Yeah, and I definitely think, last year they gave the Lions everything they could handle in that playoff game. So they're definitely a team to watch. And McVay, he's coached the team 7 years, and they made the playoffs 5 of those years, and they won a Super Bowl in one of them. So I definitely just think he's one of the best young minds in the NFL. This next one, I think, is another easy one, and we'll see what you think. The Las Vegas Raiders, they're a team. We don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, they're back and forth. They do have Devontae Adams, and we know about Max Crosby and Christian Wilkinson's now there next to him. But I just don't think the Raiders have much else, and the over under for them is 6.5. I'm going under.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I agree with you. The Raiders are the only team in the NFL that it seems like they don't have their future quarterback. Like every other team, aside from what you might think, every team thinks they got their next quarterback, and the Raiders are the only team where it's like, okay, we got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. They need to sign a quarterback next year, or they're going to have to draft a quarterback. If they're terrible, like you're saying, I think they're definitely going to be under that, and they'll be a prime team to start trading their better players like Devontae Adams and Max Crosby by midway through the year.
Yeah, and you have Mark Davis there, who he's kind of a wild card as an owner. So much like his father, he may decide to rip this thing apart and tear it down. We know that Antonio Pierce was able to get the interim tag stripped, and now he is the head coach there, and we'll see if that's able to work out for him. But yeah, I think the Raiders are in for a tough season, and 6.5 I think is the under. One of the teams in the market of the Coastal Sports Network we'll talk about is the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, a lot of people have a lot of debate about them because Tua gets the bag. He gets that huge contract. Is he worth it? And McDaniel is a guy everybody's talking about. He's the new mad scientist around the National Football League in terms of using all his weaponry, and which they do. They have Waddle, who's a little banged up, Tyreek Hill, who's one of the most explosive players, now voted the number one player in the National Football League by the players this past offseason, A-Chain, and then Mostert. So, it's going to be interesting to see with the Dolphins how they move forward. And the Dolphins over-under is 9.5. I think they will just beat that. I think they come in about 10 wins.
Yeah, I like the under on the Dolphins this year. I think that their O line is really questionable this year. They lost two of their starters in free agency. They lost their defensive line is also questionable. You look at their defense. Bradley Chubb got hurt. Jalen Phillips both not going to be healthy to start the year. They drafted Chop Robinson out of Penn State, so he looks to be pretty good. But that defense isn't very good to begin with, and now that the O line is a lot worse, you got to make sure Tua stays healthy. I don't know. It just feels like they're bound for regression this year.
Interesting, and in that division, they do play the Patriots twice, so they're going to have their opportunities. But I think they're going to be able to string some wins together and sneak into the playoffs just like they did last year. Now, when they got into playoffs, obviously we saw them knocked out pretty quickly. I think that may be the case again, but they're over under. Kansas City Chiefs. Their over under is 11.5 now.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs this year, if you look at them, they got an 11.5. Vegas projected them 11.5 wins. I would definitely take the over for them. If you look at their team, they bring back the exact same team as last year, and they just upgraded every at receiver, which was their biggest need last year. That's why they weren't doing as good last year. So I think that definitely the Chiefs will hit the over this year. What?
Yeah, the Chiefs, I think, are going to have their opportunities to kind of go. I think they're going to hit it that over 11.5 is a lot of wins for them, but I think they're going to be able to keep moving forward with that. Now, interesting team, and we talked about them earlier. I'm very high on them. Mike Tomlin, I believe in his message, what he's doing. I think that the Steelers, over under at 8.5. I think the Steelers beat that. I think they're going to be better than you possibly think.
Yeah, if you look at the Steelers every year, Mike Tomlin is coach. He's had a 500 or better season. I mean, there's just no way that Mike Tomlin starts now, especially the way that they upgraded at quarterback. They got Russell Wilson, they got Justin Fields there instead of Kenny Pickett. He just wasn't he wasn't very good last year, and he just was losing them games consistently. And now that you bring in Russ, who's a proven veteran, I mean, I think like Lloyd was saying, this could be a team that could win the division. I know he's high on them. This could definitely be a team that wins the division, and over 8.5 wins seems like a lock. Next team we're looking at is the Baltimore Ravens. They're at 10.5. And look, everybody's scrutinizing Lamar Jackson after his playoff loss to the Chiefs. They're saying, is he really built for the playoffs? I got my questions myself about Lamar Jackson, but I know in the regular season he's a proven winner. He wins 75% of his games in the regular season, and I think over 9.5 is an easy lock for Lamar Jackson. He wins every year consistently. They bring in Derrick Henry, who looks to have a bounce back year after he's been on the decline the past 2 years, but with this Ravens team, I think that he will have 15 plus touchdowns, and he'll have big games where he's rushing the ball. And like I was saying, Lamar always wins 75% of his games, so that's an easy over for me.
All right, I'm back. I got some technical difficulties, but I'm here. All right. So we're continuing talking about over-unders, win totals for the teams around the National Football League here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. We have a couple more to go to, and then we will jump over to talking about the games that just went this preseason week. And we were just saying preseason, it is what it is. They're exhibition games, but I'm just glad they're out there popping pads, and we get to see some of these guys, these young guys, get their opportunity. So the last over-under that we'll talk about here in Lloyd Vance's Insider Football here on 102.9 The Game and the Coastal Sports Network is the Detroit Lions. Now, the darling around the National Football League, everybody loved them last year, and they made some noise. They were able to compete pretty well with the Niners, the NFC Championship game. The Detroit Lions over-under is 10.5. I think that they will hit that over. I think they're 11, 12-win team. It's going to be interesting, though, with Jahmyr Gibbs' injury that we talked about earlier. Can they hit that 10.5, Nate?
Yeah, most definitely they can. With Dan Campbell as the coach, they're an aggressive team. They have one of the best offenses in the league. They have the best O-line in the league, so they're just going to keep running the ball, have an efficient offense. They upgraded their corners on defense. They got Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, so I think they're bringing back the same team, same mindset, and I think they definitely get over that mark.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch, and Jared Goff, he's Rodney Dangerfield. He gets no respect around the National Football League, and we'll see if he's able to maintain that high level of play. He is now. He got the bag. I think he's making $53 million average, so he's being paid like one of the top quarterbacks, and he's got to play like that. He does have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they do have a very good tight end, Laporta, too. So they're going to be an interesting team. And don't forget about that offensive line of theirs with Sewell and the rest of that group up front. So the Lions, I do think that they go over that 10.5. All right, we're going to switch gears here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on SR 102.9 The Game and the Coastal Sports Network. Glad that you can join me this evening. Nate Vance is sitting in the co-host chair, and we're just talking. We talked about over-unders and all the latest news and notes around the National Football League. Now we're going to jump into, we finally had some games. I watched a little of that Hall of Fame game, and obviously that was a mess. And then they kind of closed the game off after the lightning storm. They ended the game like in the third, fourth quarter. So we had true game action, and I'll just kind of go down the line, and you can give me what you think. Big deal, no big deal. The This is interesting because I was like, man, these two teams are going to stink this year. The Patriots beat the Carolina Panthers 17-3. Now, the most interesting thing I took away from this game was the play of rookie athlete quarterback Joe Milton.
Yeah, Joe Milton looked better than Drake May when he was in there, which is turning a lot of Patriots fans' heads and being like, wait, we drafted this dude in the 5th round and he looks better than our 1st-round guy, Drake May. And Drake May out of college, I mean, as a prospect, everybody knew that he was a raw prospect and it would take time for him to develop and stuff. But Joe Milton, he came ready to play and he looked just really good in the first game.
Yeah, Joe Milton's a guy, I've been following him since he was at the University of Michigan and he transferred to Tennessee. And the Patriots are even talking about possibly making him a tight end. But I think if he gets his accuracy up, he could be, a guy that's dynamic at the quarterback position. And maybe he'll make the Patriots have a tough decision. We remember back in the day, Washington brought in RG3 and they brought in Kirk Cousins at the same time. And it was situation was like, which guy do you play? So it's going to be interesting because kind of like we were talking about earlier, Drake May, out of all the quarterbacks selected in the 1st round, I just think he's going to struggle a lot. So it's going to be interesting with him. The next game we'll talk about now, this one, Nate, you and I talked about their joint practices were very feisty. And then these guys, they put kind of a stinker game out there. The Giants beat the Detroit Lions 14-3. It was very vanilla to me. A lot of backups played in this game. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just one thought. Running back Eric Gray, he looked like a really good back, bursting through the holes. All their running backs ran really well against the Lions. And I mean, you can say it's preseason and all that, but a lot of their running backs look good, and they have a hole to fill with Saquon Barkley going. So Eric Gray, he's a guy to maybe keep your eye on for. I don't know if we got any fantasy listeners, but maybe Eric Gray for fantasy football, deep sleeper.
Yeah, and Gray had 4 receptions for 46 yards. And then Miller, their other back, he had 12 rushes for 63 yards. So as you're saying, they were moving a pile for the Giants. And it, I don't know if the Lions just kind of mailed it in. But, yeah, definitely those running backs have got some Giants fans excited. The next game we'll talk about. Now, I watched this one. It was actually on Saturday, and this one was it was Friday. It was Houston Texans beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 20-12, and this one was interesting to me because Justin Fields was out there. He was doing some good things, and then he kind of had some bad. He had 2 snaps that he fumbled. Talk about the game a little bit, and do you think Justin Fields eventually be the starter because Russ is 35 years old?
I don't see a way where Justin Fields is a starter this year. I think the way Mike Tomlin wants to play football, he wants a guy like Russell Wilson, a guy who's a proven vet, who's going to take care of the ball and not make the game get out of hand for them and not give the game away, which what they had in the past. And I think Mike Tomlin just wants a consistent guy back there. And I just think that's Russ more than Justin Fields right now. Justin Fields has more of the big play potential, but you know what you're going to get in and week out with Russ.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because I know Kevin and I talked about quarterback battles at the beginning of camp, and this is one of the ones we've kept our eye on, and it seems like Tomlin is firmly behind Russell Wilson, even though he has that calf injury, and this game was another one. You didn't see a lot of the starters for the Texans, and the Steelers. I think they're just kind of waiting until the regular season starts. The next game we'll kind of talk about it. I'm interested to get your take on this because it has to do with one of the quarterbacks taken, and you wonder what's going to happen with him. So the Miami Dolphins beat the Atlanta Falcons 20-13. Michael Penix Jr. had a pretty good game, 9 of 16, 104 yards. Was able to move the football. We didn't see Kirk Cousins or any of the frontline guys. What did you just think of this one?
Yeah, I watched this game too, and I was just thinking the whole time how good Michael Penix looked. Like he was really efficient with the ball. He was taking what the defense gave him, and it just sucks for him because he's an older quarterback as it is, and he got drafted to probably the worst situation a rookie would want to get sent to, where he has to maybe sit a year or two behind Kirk Cousins after they just paid him all this money. But he'll be able to learn from Kirk Cousins, and in the end, I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, and you never know where Kirk Cousins coming off that. When he had Achilles as well, so I can't. Yeah, he had Achilles as well, and you just wonder at his age is he going to be able to come back and what kind of quarterback's going to be. And Penix, is so dynamic at the University of Washington. You want to see him get his opportunities. And there's just so many receivers that they have there. Now, they did have an unfortunate injury as well. Rondell Moore went down with I think a knee injury or something, and he's probably going to be lost for quite some time. They do have Darnell Mooney there as well as Drake London, and then Bijan Robinson is one of the most dynamic young backs out there. So that was an interesting game, but as I said, a lot of backups in this one. Now, similar game to the one that I watched, and I had my eye on this game, was the Eagles versus the Ravens. The Eagles pull it out on a 50-yard field goal by Jake Elliott at the very end, 16-13. Elliott had a tough night. He had hit the upright earlier, and then he hit the game later on. He also missed the extra point, typically automatic for the Philadelphia Eagles, but they were able to pull this one out. We talked about earlier how Sirianni is one of those coaches. He doesn't like playing his veterans. A lot of those guys sat out, a lot of backups in this game. So it was kind of sloppy football here and there. But what did you see when you saw the Ravens and the Eagles?
Yeah, I just thought it was both sides didn't really play any of their starters, and the Eagles have a lot to prove this year with how they finished off last year. And this is a fun fact people probably didn't know, but the Ravens hadn't lost a preseason game in about 8 years to that point, and the Eagles beat them. So I mean, that was pretty cool in terms of that. But Nick Sirianni just needs to prove that he's a valid coach in the NFL.
Yeah, and it was the interesting thing, and I want to get Angel's take on this. Probably the guy that broke out in this game. He's the son of a legend with the Eagles. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was flying all over the place on defense. Now, he and rookie Will Shipley, the running back, had a nice game. What did you think of Trot Jr. in this one? Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
yes, these sleeveless action, what it is here, late night in Florida, or at least late evening. It will he be just like his dad? I definitely think he learned a lot from his father, and rightfully so. I think he looked well for the first preseason game. I can't wait to see if, and it's going to be a long if they plan on starting on defense or not. But I would like to see how he's going to end up doing if he does for the Brazil game, if he actually makes a roster. But I think from what what Jeremiah, his dad, had taught him defensively, I think he looked sharp for, again, just one game. We'll see what happens this upcoming week, but I think he looked as sharp as he possibly could and should be in the running for at least to make the 54-man roster.
Yeah, he'll definitely make the roster, and I think he's going to push Zach Bond, who came over from the New Orleans Saints, and he's a veteran type guy, but I think Trotter's going to get his opportunities. He did have 4 tackles in the second half, so that was good to see that young man. And we talked about earlier about the Jets and their struggles. They won against Washington 20-17. Any thoughts on that one, Nate? I mean, the biggest player looks like it was Adrian Martinez, who was a UFL guy in this one.
Yeah, I like to see Jaden Daniels playing. He threw a nice deep ball down the sidelines, which Dan Quinn, after the game, he said that's not the play he even called. He audibled it on the field. So that's something you'll see from the young quarterback. And then he had the rushing touchdown, too, on the read option. I think he's going to be a really good player, and he had a really good start to his career.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels is definitely exciting. He was one of my breakout guys when we talked about quarterbacks a couple weeks ago, and I think they're going to be a dynamic team. I think Washington could be that team that sneaks in that 6th, 7th spot. I don't think they're ready to challenge the Eagles for the division, but they definitely could, turn some heads because I think the Giants are downtrodden. And we talked about the Cowboys and their mess. So a couple more, and then we'll jump over to preview the NFC South. How about the Tennessee Titans? They won 17-13 over the Niners.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of this game, only the first quarter when the starters were in, and Will Levis looked to have a good connection with Calvin Ridley already, which could be exciting for Titans fans coming up this season. Could see a lot of big plays from them too, and like I was saying earlier in the over under segment, I think the Titans are a team that people need to watch out for this year, and I think Will Levis is going to be a good quarterback in this NFL.
Well, okay. You believe more than I do. I don't know. We'll see. Now, we'll end the preseason games with your team, Heath. I don't know if they didn't care. Sean McDermott was like, whatever. They lose very badly at home, 33-6 to the Chicago Bears. And Caleb Williams is out there. I think he looked good for the short time that he played for the Bears. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, well, the first quarter, all the starters played for both sides, and the Bears were just dominating them. Caleb looked like the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I think Caleb's just going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL by the end of his career. But yeah, he looked good. I mean, he was had a lot of velocity on the ball when he was throwing it. It was coming out quick. He was making the smart reads. He did have one bad play where it was almost a pick, but it ended up being a flag, so it didn't even matter. So he had a really good start to his career.
Yeah, I'm starting to believe in Caleb Williams. I think he's going to definitely be a player coming out around the NFL. And you and I know we had our fantasy draft, and I grabbed a bunch of Bears, so I think they're going to ride on his coattails. Even though Kevin's not big on Caleb Williams, but to each his own. So here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on SR 1029 The Game and the Coast Sports Network, we're going to do our preview for the upcoming season. We're going to look at the NFC South, which is our home division for our listeners here in the Tampa area. So we'll jump right into this. I'll start with the team that I think is going to win the division. I think, Nate, that the Atlanta Falcons are ready to make that leap with Raheem Morris. You have Cousins there, who is a great regular season quarterback. I know he's coming off the Achilles, but I think they're ready. They've already got all the pieces in place. Defense maybe has a little bit to be desired for. They allow 21.9 points per game, but they do have building blocks like Jesse Bates and Grady Jarrett. I think that the Atlanta Falcons will be the kings of this division. What do you think about the Falcons?
Yeah. Like we were saying over under segment, I think this is their division to lose. They added Kirk Cousins in the offseason, obviously. They also drafted Michael Penix, but Kirk Cousins is a proven veteran in this league. He can win a lot of games in the regular season. He not so much in the playoffs, but in the regular season, he's definitely a really good quarterback, can sling the ball around to this offense who has Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts, all guys who everybody knows is good, but we're just in a scheme that was not good with Arthur Smith and just terrible quarterbacks in Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, and Marcus Mariota over the past 2 years. So, yeah, and also I like the addition of Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, coming over from the Rams tree. McVay has always put good coaches in good situations. So I think he's going to bring that style of offense over here to Atlanta, and you're just going to see so much better offense from what it was last year, and they're going to be a good team this year.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with the Falcons is they got to do better up front in their pass rush. So, but as long as they can clean that up, I think they're going to be able to win this division or compete for the top. The next team here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football, we definitely got to hit on them. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talk about all our great listeners down in that area, and we appreciate them. It's an interesting team because they won a division the last 2 seasons. Last season they won it, I think, with a 9-8 record. I think the previous season they won a division with an 8-9 record. So, they're going to be around that mix, and everybody talks about how bad this division is. But I think Atlanta's getting better, and they're going to have to compete with them. So we all know the big names on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers: Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They have Tristan Wirth finally, under contract. He got that squared away. Baker Mayfield, is he going to be the same guy? I wonder if last year he kind of had a magic carpet ride. I tend to think he's going to kind of struggle, but I really like their defense, what they have, Antoine Winfield Jr. and the rest of the group back there. I think Tampa Bay will be able to compete with the Falcons, but they're going to come up short in terms of making the playoffs. I think only one team is going to make the playoffs out of this division.
Yeah, the big question with them is can they replace Dave Canales, who helped Baker unlock his potential, and that's a big part of why I think he had a big season last year. And he goes to the Panthers. He's their head coach now, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. But yeah, the Bucks. I mean, they didn't do anything to get better, and they didn't do anything to get worse. They're a team every year since Brady was older that last year that they're just going to hover around 500, like you were saying. And I think they're just going to be the same ways as they were the past 2 years, just like you were saying.
Yeah, and they were interesting because they won 6 of their last 7 games. They got hot. They beat the Eagles. The Eagles fans, sorry, but they beat them pretty bad in the playoffs. And but I just think that Atlanta's assembling a good group there. And the key for Atlanta, obviously, they got 2 quarterbacks when they didn't have any before. And Nate made a good point there. Arthur Smith was kind of holding that group back. So, I think Tampa Bay will continue to compete, but it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to hold off the Falcons. The next team we're talking about, our NFC South preview here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network, is the New Orleans Saints. Now, this is another team, Nate, stuck in neutral. That was a great term used because I think they're very similar. Every year they're around 8 wins, 9 wins, but last year they came up short, no playoffs, even though they had 9 wins. And when I look at this team, Derek Carr just is not the guy they thought he was going to be when they traded for him from the Raiders. And they've never really recovered from that. So they have some names, Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. And defensively, they still have Cam Jordan and some of the other guys. But I think the Saints are poised for a fallback, and that may work in their favor because let's face it, Dennis Allen, they may need to tear this thing down and kind of build from there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the fact that Dennis Allen has managed to keep his job for this long is just amazing to me because he year in and year out, I think he's been one of the bottom 5 coaches in the NFL. And Sean Payton vouched for him a couple years ago. That's why they're keeping him around. But they just need to end that whole era with Sean Payton and restart. Like you were saying, Derek Carr, he wasn't good last year. When he's under pressure, he's not a good quarterback, and they have the worst ranked O-line in the league. So I think they're not going to be very good this year. You could maybe see Spencer Rattler come in like halfway through the year if they're not really a good team. So yeah, I don't think that I have them finishing last this year in the division.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And Spencer Rattler's a guy that I talked about before on the show. I followed him since he was in high school, and he can spin that ball. So maybe they say Carr, he kind of doesn't do enough. They put Rattler in there. The last team we'll talk about in our NFC South preview here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football is the Carolina Panthers. Dave Canales comes over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, bringing that playbook. Now, the only thing wild card with this team is owner David Tepper and his hot temper. They need to win now. But I gotta wonder what Bryce Young's going to be able to bring to the table because he did not play well last year. They only scored about 14 points per game offensively.
Yeah, I think they brought in the right coach finally this time, in Dave Canales, which will help Bryce Young. If he's that guy, he will help him develop. Because you saw what he did in Seattle with Geno Smith. You saw what he did in Tampa with Baker Mayfield. Both resurrected their careers. And I think he could do that for Bryce Young. Bryce Young had a lot of talent coming out of college. The only knock on him is he's small. He's so small out there. I mean, you've seen the videos of him. People say he looks like a middle schooler playing out there with those NFL guys and stuff. But they added so much talent around him. Added a lot more talent, I should say. than they had last year, and he just had no shot to do anything last year. And I think this is a team that's on the uptick, and hopefully Bryce Young can figure out how to succeed in this league.
Yeah, the Panthers are going to be interesting because they have one big game. It's in Week 10 over in Germany. They play the Giants over there, and overall their schedule. We talk about these last place schedules. They're going to have opportunities. They play the Saints twice. They play the Raiders. They play Washington, Denver. The Giants. I just talked about. So they're going to have their chances. So hopefully Bryce Young can step forward and another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coastal Sports Network. I really appreciate Nate jumping on for the whole show. And Nate, do you have anything you want to go over? He's going back to school, everybody.
Nah, I'm all good. Thanks for having me.
All right. See, that's that professional outro. So he's doing a great job as communications major over there at Misericordia. We'll get him on during the season, but I appreciate everybody joining us here and lots more to talk about. As I said, the Eagles will be practicing with the Patriots this week, and then a lot more preseason games. So thanks for joining. We'll talk to you later.